All right. Thank you guys for joining the Realty One Stop Mastermind group. Tonight we have a guest, Jaideep Balekar, goes by Jay. He is a Cincinnati-based investor. Have a long bio here, so I will pick out some highlights here to share. He has a tech background, over 10 years of experience in that, in a Fortune 100 company, or doing tech for consulting for Fortune 100 companies. He does value add real estate, multifamily. He is invested in, now, Jay, this is one question I had. Is this over 800 total deals, or is it 500 that you are GPN and 300 you're sponsoring, or is that combined or in total?
Combined. So 500 units as a GP, 300 are our deals, 300 units, and the other 200s were where we were co-GPs on, mainly capital raise.
Awesome. Awesome. Cool. So a lot of experience. And when did you start investing in real estate?
2020.
Wow. Okay. So
Right
a
when
lot of
COVID.
scale in a short amount of time, which Jay and I actually just formally connected a few weeks ago. So we are just getting to know each other. So I'm going to probably learn as much as everybody listening to this call tonight. And we've kind of floated in circles for the last few years, but never really got to actually have FaceTime until recently. So I'm interested to get to know him better and obviously bring his experience here to the group. So tell me a little bit about your background before you got into real estate. I know I mentioned it briefly, but if you could expand on that.
Sure. I mean, before real estate, it was just the tech job, right? So I was in tech for about 10 years. Um, Originally from India, and then got my bachelor's in computer science, master's from University of Cincinnati, and that's how I ended up in Cincinnati. And then right out of school, entered the tech world and worked in cybersecurity for 10 years. And my dad has been a real estate investor back in India, and that was the only investment vehicle that he always invested in. And I saw real estate serving him well. And I was like, okay, so when I had a little bit of money to invest, my mind went to real estate. And after I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant, some of these books, it made complete sense to me that, I should have actually started sooner. So that's when it all started, where I even ended up selling our personal single family home that I used to live in, Mason. And because we didn't have kids, we didn't have to worry about schools and stuff like that. The wife was supportive. So we ended up house hacking, started with 8 units and then a 4 family. So started with small multifamily, and now we're trying to focus on mid-sized multifamily, where still the larger investors don't look at that space because it's too small for them. But people who are buying 4 families or 8 units, they're not looking at those 30, 40, 50 units either. So we still see decent amount of good quality deals in that space. So that's kind of our current focus.
That's amazing. So you bought your first property in 2020, your first real estate investment?
Right. Yep.
Wow. Okay. So tell me about that first deal. I know you said you house hacked. You said you house hacked an 8 unit.
No, the 8 unit was an investment.
Oh,
And
okay.
then to kind of, because we were like, okay, now our personal capital is running low. How can we buy more with
Mm.
minimum capital invested? So FHA with 3.5% down was the next thing. But then you have to stay in that property, which is why we ended up house hacking. This 4 unit was in College Hill, but this was actually our third deal. The first one was 8 units in Norwood on Williams, and it was essentially 2 4 families right next to each other.
Mm.
So that way it was not all 8 units, because qualifying for a commercial loan with no experience would have been a little difficult. But with 4 families being residential, we had 2 residential loans. And with the W-2 income and credit score, we were able to easily qualify. It was just a standard Fifth Third Bank loan. So I didn't even know working with local banks and getting better quality or debt and better deals and stuff like that. I just went to one bank, took the terms that they gave me, and got that deal done. But yeah, it was a really good learning experience because that property was extremely dilapidated. One of the roofs had caved in. Both the balconies on those 4 units collapsed after we bought the property. Um, Brick buildings, lots of tuck pointing work. Essentially, every surface we had to redo. So all new electrical work because it had knob and tube, all new plumbing because the cast iron pipes had broken, they had frozen through and cracked. So it was a great learning experience because I initially thought it was going to take me $70,000 to fix all of that up in inside and outside, and ended up costing us over 200,000.
Wow.
So I was way off there, but again, because of location, Norwood, very close to Rookwood Mall, right there across from I-71, I believe. The location kind of saved us. So that one thing that people talk about is location, location, location. Well, it's not all about location, but a good chunk of it is really about location. So after we were done, the rents we got was actually more than what we had initially anticipated. And although the returns would have been a lot better with $70,000 spent on capex instead of 200,000, but we were able to cash out refi on that property twice, and I have no money stuck in that deal now. So it turned out pretty good at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's amazing. So how did you find those first two deals?
On market, this was right on Redfin.
And what
So
month of 2020 was this? When did you close?
this was January 2020.
Okay, so you bought these right before COVID hit and kind of the world stopped. Obviously, knowing how the market has exploded since then, price wise, probably worked out as a really good time to buy. Okay, so you bought two four families, and then you decided to house hack a third four family.
Yeah, so after these 8 units, then we bought a 10 unit in Walnut Hills. And at that point, because we had done 8 units, we were like, okay, now we have a little bit of experience. So hopefully we qualify for commercial loan. And by that time, by talking to people like yourself, I was a little bit wiser than my first deal. So I went through a mortgage broker, got much better loan terms on this deal. And I was a lot closer on renovation budget. I was actually, we didn't go over budget on this renovation. This was also all inside and out. So that was bought for this 10 unit in Walnut Hills, all 2 bedrooms. We paid 47 a door and put in 20 a door in renovations. So all in 67, maybe another 3K in holding costs per door. So all in about 70 grand per door. And then we, the valuation or appraised value for that property came in at 1.4 million after we were all done.
Wow.
So yeah, the appraisals are not coming in as high now with the cap rates beginning to adjust, but we got lucky on that one for sure. So that turned out to be a good deal. And so after that 10 unit is when we did the 4 family house hack.
Okay. So this is something that I struggled with when I was, starting to buy multifamily. So I want to ask you about this because I think it's probably a situation a lot of the people watching this and in this group find themselves. What was your lifestyle prior to getting into real estate? And what I mean by that is like, you said you're married, you said you had no kids. What type of house were you living? You don't have to go super specific, but like, give me an example of your lifestyle prior to that house hack.
Yeah, I mean, the first house we bought in Mason was a typical starter home, 2,500 square foot, 4-bedroom home. I mean, I would be happy to live in that house even now, like our lifelong, very comfortable. But me and my wife have always been big savers. So we actually paid down the entire, like, we basically had no loan on that house. We paid down our mortgage in less than 5 years. So all we were doing is every time we would get a bonus or anything, it's going towards repaying the loan off. So that's why we had enough money saved up, where the first 8 unit deal we did, the down payment was from savings and the entire rehab was funded using our HELOC against the home that we had fully paid off. And of course, now I know that instead of paying that loan that I'd gotten at 2.75% rate of interest, I should have actually put that money to work instead of repaying that loan. But still, I think it was still not a mistake because repaying that loan made sure that we had some capital ready to deploy. And the HELOC was definitely, it came in handy because when that $70,000 budget went up to $210,000, if we didn't have that big HELOC on our home, we would have been in trouble.
So It sounds like you said you had no kids, 2,500 square foot, nice house in Mason. It may not have been a mansion, so to speak, but still. Tell me how mentally, psychologically, you were able to go from that. And it sounds like you sold that house, if I understood you. Okay,
Mhm.
so you sell that and you go and live in an apartment in a four family, and you said College Hill. That was your house hack.
Yes.
Okay, so obviously, very anyone familiar with Cincinnati market, very different type of neighborhood, very different type of environment. So tell me how that went psychologically for you and your wife.
Yeah, I think that was actually perhaps the biggest and hardest decision that we had to make. It was harder than deciding to invest in our first investment property, because at that point we were literally selling our home that we had fully paid off. We put in 5 years of work in making it perfect and to our taste. And now we were about to sell it. And I think kudos to my wife as well, because most of my other friends that I've spoken to who want to house hack and they want to sell their home and go back to sharing walls with people, their wives would just not let them do it. So I had a supportive spouse, so that was great. But then it was a really big decision. And going back to College Hill is not a bad neighborhood, but it's very different from Mason, right? It's not as safe. You would see some shady characters hanging around sometimes. And then moving to an 800 square foot apartment from a 25 square foot home. So that downsizing took a lot of effort as well. But in retrospect, and we renovated that apartment. So even in that 800 square foot apartment, we were very comfortable. And I think it was a really good decision, because now we look at that 4 unit apartment building, and it has gone up in value by over 120K. And with the leverage on it is so high that it still cash flows really, really good, like almost $400 per door per month in cash flow. With $11,000 invested as down payment, that actually came from the cash flow of the first 8 unit, right? So it was still a really good decision, but I agree. I mean, it was the hardest decision that we had to take.
Yeah, and the point I want to make with what you just said is that I talked to so many new investors, and especially someone like you. You said you had 10 years in a corporate setting prior to getting it, even starting in real estate. Um, I assume working in tech. Does your wife work? I don't know if you mentioned that. Yeah, so
Yeah,
she
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 works in tech as well.
she works in tech, right? So I'm assuming you had a really comfortable salary. And for the vast majority of people I talk to, they're unwilling to make those sacrifices that you made, um, because they've become accustomed to this lifestyle. It's difficult to downgrade your lifestyle after 10 years of living in probably more comfort than an 800 square foot apartment. So I think that that's really awesome that you guys were able to do that. Your wife was supportive. That's another huge challenge I see with a lot of new investors. Um, and I tell people all the time, it's like your ability to expedite your journey from starting to financial freedom is inversely related to how uncomfortable you're willing to be. And again, like I said, most people are not willing to do that. So I think that's awesome. I think more people, especially starting out, have to be willing to make sacrifices to make real estate a reality and financial freedom a reality. So let's fast forward a little bit. Obviously, you've done a lot of stuff in 3 years. And so tell me how you got into partnerships or raising money. How did that go about, and what did those first couple deals look like?
Yeah, so partnerships was a result of a few different things. Primarily, it was because recycling the capital is a slow process, right? So you buy a deal, you stabilize it, then you fill it up. And then after that, the banks usually want to see at least 3 to 6 months of stable NOI to be able to refi. And then that refi takes another 2 months. So it's about a 14 to 18 month process to be able to do that. And we started realizing that, oh, that's way too slow. And we were able to not act on some of the other good deals that were hitting the market because our capital is all stuck. That was primary. But before we started, working with other people or raising capital, if you will, we wanted to make sure that we have done our own deals and we've gone through a few cycles ourselves. That way we have a little bit of a track record to show. So The first JV deal that I did was already after I had built a 40 unit portfolio of my own personally. And that's the portfolio we still have. A good chunk of it we self manage. After those 40 units and after going through a few refis, that's when we started, talking to people. And these people were folks, friends we met through other masterminds and mentorship groups. So these were friends by that time. So not, investors that I was reaching out to, not like a syndication model, if you will. It was more like, hey, you know what? I found a deal. We already know each other. We know each other as human beings, but they also know about the track record that we built. So even the people were way more comfortable, working with us. And I think the first deal I did, JV, for the work that I'm doing, if we still hold it, we plan to hold it for another 5 years. I only took 5% equity. So it was a 95-5 split. So, I mean, that's not a really good split for the GP, right? I mean, the deal is giving almost 20% cash on cash just from the cash flow, and almost all of it is going to investors. But I was willing to do that because it was the first one that I did in partnership. So initially, when you're starting out, I was actually recently talking to one of the newer investors, and they've found a decent deal, not in our market, but on their very first deal, they want to do a 60-40 split, and they're having a hard time raising money. So I'm like you can't be greedy if you're doing your first deal. You have to take a little bit less and give up a little bit more to be able to, get going. So, but I think that was the main thing to get to partnerships, was mainly because we started to run out of capital. We wanted the ability to work on more deals and had built a bit of a track record.
No, that makes perfect sense. And again, willing to sacrifice, right, to accomplish what you're trying to do, and to build your track record of return for your investors. So how did you scale so quickly once you started raising money in partnerships?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there were probably three biggest milestones. The first one was buying that first 8 unit. That was the biggest milestone. Just making that decision and moving forward. In general, I have not ever struggled too much with making decisions. And on the other hand, my wife she really struggles with making decisions, and she's like, okay, you just make the decisions for us. At least, that's good that she lets me do it. So I never had a hard time once we knew the numbers worked using the bigger pockets calculator. I didn't do any fancy underwriting back then, just bigger pockets, punch in the numbers. If the numbers look good, we'll move forward. And on these 8 units, it looked like the deal is working. We were like, okay, let's do it. Unless we do it, we're not going to learn, right? So that was the first milestone. The second milestone was actually the 10 unit, because it was a commercial property and definitely a lot bigger looking building than the 2 4 families. And after we bought that, we were like, oh my God, we just bought this thing. It's like 10 apartments. So it's back then, it was like a huge deal, right? And then after that, it was the 63 unit, which was the first JV that we did. That 63 unit came from a broker off market. The numbers worked. I was very confident that it's going to work. It's in Erlanger, Kentucky, right on Turkey Foot. And Turkey Foot is pretty major thoroughfare. Mm-hmm. And I knew the location was good. The numbers were working. I was pretty confident in the deal. But obviously, I didn't have means to bring up $1.5 million. So these few people that I had connected with on Bigger Pockets, Bay Area investors, we'd been chatting for almost 6 months. So they knew me pretty well. They were seeing what I'm doing, and they had full faith that we'll be able to operate the property. So they flew down, looked at the property, and then we moved forward. And that was another very big milestone, because it was going from 10 units to 63 units. So you're like, wow. So those were the three biggest milestones. And we haven't really, as a lead sponsor, we haven't really bought like a 200 unit apartment complex yet. So I think that's now the next milestone for us to prepare us mentally. I think it's all about mindset, because it is true. You'll see a lot of so-called gurus, and there's you got to be careful with which guru you're listening to, because there's just so many gurus these days. But a lot of gurus would tell you that, hey, a 2 unit versus 200 unit, there's not a whole lot different. It's only more zeros to your profit, but there are more zeros on your losses too if you make a mistake. No one tells you that, right? So, but I think scaling with the 4, 8, 10, then a 20 unit, maybe 60, and then trying to go after that large one. Or if you do want to go after your large one as the first one, then go in with someone who's done it before, right? So I think that's my perspective, but I think it's mainly about mindset. Once your mind's ready, and if the numbers work, I mean, you cannot ignore the numbers. I think you can take that milestone. So for me, those three were the biggest milestones for me to change my perspective about how the deals work. And I would say that it is true that once you do a 4 unit and then you do a 20 unit and then you do a 60 unit, the way the deals work is still exactly the same. The amount of time they all take is still exactly the same, but they're still learning in the process. You can't ignore that.
Yeah, and there's so many good points you made there. I mean, one thing I found as I scaled up my own portfolio is like it actually gets a little bit easier once you have the experience and confidence, because finding and putting together deals is a relatively similar amount of effort, whether it's a duplex or a 20 unit or whatever. But it's like once you start buying those mid-sized multifamilies like you're talking about, you can't do it all yourself. Even if you're self-managing, you're not going to do it alone. And so, it allows you to bring in the revenue to hire people, hopefully people that are better at certain skills than you are, that you can offload those things to. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. How are you managing your portfolio now? I know you said you still self-manage some of your original 40 units you bought yourself, but what does the rest of it look like? How are you managing those?
Yeah, so across our portfolio, we've been using 3 property managers. So we have a couple assets in the Dayton market.
Okay.
We have a different property management team there. Our Cincinnati assets are managed between one of the property managers here, and also the recent acquisition we did, my partner does in-house property management.
Mm.
And then in Northern Kentucky, it's another company. So eventual goal would be to self-manage or partner up with someone who has a management company and just, do that in-house. But right now, because our assets are mid-sized to smaller size to mid-sized assets that are spread across multiple locations, if we hire one leasing agent and one maintenance guy, they would be spending time just driving around. So it just doesn't make sense currently. But it's basically currently spread across three major PMs in 3 different areas.
Okay. So third party management on a lot of it. What are you guys in your partnerships that you have? What are you doing now to try to find deals? And when was the last acquisition you had?
The last one we closed on was early May. And that was also on market, listed by Capstone. So it was listed for much higher than what we paid for it. It had certain issues, so we had some valid points, but it's a pretty smooth transaction. The sellers very professional as well. Pretty large group here in Cincinnati. They do student rentals. This was the only non-student rental they had, which is why they were offloading it. But finding deals, we've been trying to do off-market cold calling. Haven't had much luck, honestly. I think some of the people, they make it sound like the sellers don't know what they have and what they're selling, but sellers are not stupid. They know their asset. They know what's it worth. There could be 1 in 1,000 chance that you may find someone who's extremely highly motivated and is willing to offload their property at a discount, but we just don't have the amount of time it takes to dedicate towards that. So instead, we've been just focusing our attention towards broker relationships and sourcing deals through brokers.
Now, with your original like 40 units, did you buy any of that off market, or was all of that stuff like, listed with agents and on the market?
The 4 unit house hack was off market. It came through an agent. So that's one important distinction is off market, again, doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't come from an agent, right? It doesn't always mean direct to seller.
Mhm.
It could still come from an agent or a broker. It's just that it's a pocket listing, or you know them personally and you have a relationship and it comes to you before it ever hits the market. So that 4 unit was actually, I had made a post on multiple Facebook groups that I'm looking for a 4 family, all 2 bedrooms, to house hack. And a local agent reached out to me that, hey, he has an investor who's willing to sell this property, and it worked out. So maybe out of everything, that 63 unit we have was off market as well. But all of these deals have come through agents and brokers. So nothing through truly direct to seller.
Okay. So looking at your last 3, almost 4 years now journey, what would you say some of your biggest challenges were?
It's been different challenges at different phases in the journey. I think initially it was more of an analysis paralysis and taking that first step and kind of just having certainty that this is going to work. After we did the first couple deals and we knew that the model works, and the BRRRR methodology works, probably a little difficult to do BRRRRs now with interest rates where they are at. I think the next phase of the journey, the challenge started to become just bandwidth for asset management, because now I believe we have 14 or 15 assets, and even the smaller assets still take a lot of time in terms of asset management and tracking the KPIs. So that was another challenge. And property management continues to stay a challenge. So I think unless you bring it in house and have full control over every aspect of your business, I think that would be one aspect that would stay a challenge. So I wouldn't say that it's a hurdle, or we're losing money because of it, but we have to stay on top of our property managers like all the time. And that's our role as asset managers. But I think a lot of that challenge could potentially be mitigated if we build our own PM company and put in those processes, which would be a lot of work upfront, but it would pay for itself. So I think right now, property management and deal sourcing for the last couple of years has been very challenging. Even the off-market stuff, the pricing they were asking, sellers, was just crazy. And now the deals that are like the larger stuff, I was just looking at a deal that was listed at, I think, 17.5 mil, and now their pricing expectation is 15. So it's just, the market is correcting, so it's automatically changing. So I'm hoping that we'll see some better, more normal deals. May not be home runs, but at least numbers where, prices where the numbers actually make sense. But last 2 years, deal sourcing was, a huge challenge for sure.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with that. Ben asked, since you said BRRRR is getting more difficult with interest rates where they are, what is the other strategy you're moving to, or what are you business plan on your current deals?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I remember seeing someone else ask this question on Nate Barger's BRRRR Academy. And I mean, he runs the BRRRR Academy. So, and I do agree with his answer to that question, that I think the BRRRR method still works, but it just depends on what price you're paying right now. So I think your purchase cost needs to go down to be able to refi, because now the banks are refining at slightly lower leverage. No one's doing the 80 LTC anymore, and they're doing maybe 70 LTV at refi. The seasoning periods have gone up. So I think you got to take all of that into consideration if you're planning to do a BRRRR deal. But I think it still works. So the BRRRR method still works as long as you're buying at the right price.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll add to that. I bought a 28 unit in Clifton, student, converting into student rentals a little over a year ago, and we were able to get a 5 1/8 rate, which at the time was still a good rate, and obviously today is a great rate. And we assumed that rates were going to stabilize at some point, and 3 years was kind of a target to do a back end refi and cash out. Well, if rates don't drop below probably 7-6%, it just doesn't make any sense to recapitalize at such a high rate where, we're going to cut our cash flow, probably by 70%, 80% once we are, stabilized and fully turned. And so it's like, that's another factor, right? You have to kind of determine, it's like, is it worth losing $5,000 a month in cash flow to cash out however many hundreds of thousands of dollars in potential equity? Obviously, there's other ways around it too. You could sell it, you could 1031, or you could even maybe take a second. So I think that's where on some of these bigger deals, having really good relationships with the banks, and that's why I recommend working with local and regional banks that are going to be more willing to help and maybe offer you a line of credit or a second, where you're not going to get that from like a national bank typically.
Definitely.
Cool. Well, let's open it up. Let's open up to Q&A. I'm sure people here have a lot of questions, and let us know what time you got to jump out. So feel free to just let us know whenever that time comes.
Yeah,
but we'll try to get some questions in here.
So, Joe, on that Clifton property, were you able to find supplemental? Because that's something that we are dealing with as well, and most lenders are still saying no, even local banks. So
yeah, so I have not when I bought it, purchased, and then I got a $600,000 construction loan as well as part of the purchase loan. And so we're still working through that construction period. We had an 18-month draw period. So I think at this point we're going to just cash flow it, because we're almost doubling the the NOI on it, or by 90% anyway increase. So it's like, it'll cash flow really well, and we'll keep that rate for a while. I think we locked over for 5 years, so we got some time to ride that 5% rate out. But if we have to, if we can, if they'll give us a line of credit after we are done and get it reappraised, or if they'll give us a second, then it might make sense to put that money into another deal.
Awesome. Cool.
Tiwi?
Hey, Jay. Thanks, Joe. No, I've noticed that a lot of deals that I've had under contract have not gone through because the partners were arguing. Even the 110 unit I have now, the partners kind of got into an argument, so I didn't think it would happen. And so my question for you, Jay, is how did you build the relationship with your JV partners on that 63 unit over time? And how did you structure the partnership and the roles and the responsibilities so that it doesn't feel like your capital partners in California are overstepping, or even your local partners kind of know their roles and it's a good collaboration?
Yeah, that's a good question. You really don't know what you're getting into until you're doing business with them, because you may know someone just over Zoom calls, but unless you start working with them, you really don't truly know them as to how they operate in terms of business. I would say that I kind of lucked out, but again, this main individual who's the other, well, technically everybody's active because it's JV, so legally everybody's active, right? So they all join the calls, but only one of my partners is more active than the rest of them. And I knew him for almost 6 months, multiple Zoom calls. So we've been talking and making offers on multiple deals together. So we kind of knew each other's working styles. So I knew that going in. The other partners are basically friends and family of this individual. So he does primarily most of the communication with them. And then I send out just property specific updates and do monthly calls with them. Thankfully, they've all been very reasonable people to work with. So on that 63 unit, I kind of lucked out, but hey, not every deal is same. So there was 132 unit that we actually sold in College Hill, and College Hill, with all of you Cincinnatians, as you guys know, that it's going up, right? The area neighborhood is improving. There's a lot of new development happening. So that 32 unit, if we would have held on to it, I'm sure it would have been worth way more by our projected exit timeline, which was about 7 years. But the two major challenges on that deal that we had was, one, property management. We had actually a large property manager on that asset, But again, large property management company doesn't mean that they'll always do a good job. By the end of the day, it depends on who's the actual leasing agent and maintenance guy that you get, right? And we didn't get a very good leasing agent at all, and they didn't want to switch that person as well. So that was one challenge. But the other challenge was actually partnership. The partners were not really valuing the work that I was putting in. So I was managing all of the rehabs and stabilization. And they were actually talking about reducing my equity down from 5% to 2%. I'm like, and then I would get text messages, hey, Jay, go see if the dumpster's overflowing. I'm like, I mean, I'm not getting paid to do this, like this is something that the maintenance guy should be able to keep an eye out on, right? So there was the expectations about what asset management is were not aligned at all. And I was just not getting compensated for my time. And the partnership was not going very well. So we collectively made the decision that, hey, well, the market's still hot and we can exit at a good price point. Let's just end it here. Yeah, because it's a marriage for 5 to 7 years. And if you're not enjoying it, why stay in it? So we sold that asset for that reason.
Yeah,
So,
that's
yeah.
That's a tough situation, and I personally would not advise anyone to be a active operator for a 5% equity, even at the sake of experience. And I'm sure Jay would probably share that sentiment in hindsight.
Yep.
Oh, Jay, curious. That's, I mean, super good insight on the partnership. On the first partnership that you did, was that 32 unit the first partnership deal that you're referring to, or was it your 10 unit?
The 10 unit was our own, so we did not have any partners on it. So the first JV we did was actually that 63 unit, and that still is doing well. The partnership is going great. And then right after that one, we did the 32 unit. So it was still one of my very first JV deals.
Were they the same part? It sounds like they're different partnership groups between the 60 plus and the 32, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, I got a question on your very first partnership. It sounds like you did it for 5% equity. Do you mean a 5% equity carve out on top of capital that you put in, or is it just, what can you explain a little bit about the money that you put in and then the 5% that you're referring to?
Yeah. So 5% on top of my LP share, if you will.
Okay.
So essentially, the money I invested in that deal was minimal. It was like 10 grand, plus about 40K in acquisition fee that I put back in the deal. So technically, I put in about 50K, and that 5% is for the work I'm doing. So that's truly the
Okay.
I wouldn't call it GP share, but Class A equity.
Yeah, probably shouldn't say GP share, but yeah, I totally get it, because I've been working with a number of groups that do similar partnerships, and I was actually talking to our CPA today about it, because there are a number of things to think about, even just in how the operating agreement is set up. So for one, let's say you essentially put in 50K, and then you got an additional 5% of ownership interest. What actually Phil was the one who brought this up. Then I had to bring it up with a different CPA who's working with fractional. Phil's the one who brought this up. You can have these carve outs of ownership that are different than the actual amounts of money that you put in, right? Like, for example, you can have somebody be a guarantor on a loan and maybe they get an extra 5% or so. That's one situation. But for something where it requires active participation, just like how you did it, it's almost like earned income the day that you do it. So the difference that we're talking about here is, let's say you put in 50K and you get credit for 60K worth. In one situation, let's say your recourse on the loan, your initial contribution is 50, you get a higher ownership share. When you exit, everything ends up being capital gains, which is great because that's a lower tax rate. Whereas Phil was the one who brought it up. He's like, that extra 10K, if you're getting that for being an owner, you get taxed on that right away. That's income day one. So I just got super curious about that and trying to figure out, because I'm in the VC kind of world. And I know people get around that with certain tax laws. And I talked to my tax accountant today, and he said he doesn't think, whoever gets that, basically the sweat equity, needs to pay tax on it the immediate year at ordinary income tax. Just curious if you had, since you did it and probably went through a tax return, how that gets treated, and anyone else can chime in as well.
That's really interesting because yeah, I mean, Phil does all of my personal property taxes. He's not doing it for our JVs. So I guess he didn't bring it up because he's just doing it for all my personal properties. But the CPA we use for all of the JVs and syndications, he did not actually bring that up because that would kind of suck to pay taxes on that 40K as earned income on day one. I don't know anyone else in the group going through that. And Joe, did you have to do that? Are you using Phil as well?
Yeah,
I
work with Phil. He does all my stuff in my partnerships and stuff. But so for me, it's a little different because the only acquisition fees I've taken from finding deals in partnerships is my broker fee. So I'll either negotiate that if it's offered through like whatever the listing broker, or I'll add that to the deal. But I get basically my earned income through my sales business, and then it's taxed like my ordinary business income. So I guess that's probably the difference. If I took that as equity, or if I took that and then reinvested it into the actual partnership, then it would probably be taxed differently. So yeah, that's probably a good question to bring up to your CPA.
Yeah, so that's like an outstanding question with Phil, because I was talking to him, but I hear different things between our two CPAs, and I talked to a lawyer, and the lawyer said, hey, actually what you want to do is take your original ownership equity, don't take additional equity, but add like a bonus at exit, take like a incentive bonus at the very end to get that all caught up, and it'll still be a capital gain. So that's a big thing. It's not just being taxed today; it's also capital gains tax rates versus your
income tax, right? All right, cool. What other questions you got? I know Jay doesn't have much more time, so I want to get a couple questions in there if we can.
Joe, I just have a quick one if you don't mind. Jay, thanks for the time. Appreciate the info. I actually remember those 240 units on Williams, and I do remember the condition when they were listed. So when you took those on, that definitely took guts. I was curious, going into that, how did you vet contractors? And like you said, your budget going from 70 to 200, was that just as you peeled back layers of the property? Was that some mistakes with contractors? I think we're all fortunate to know a guy like Joe with his company that's reliable and does first-rate work, but that can be a monster in and of itself after you identify the property. I was just curious if you could talk on that a little bit, about that process for those of us who haven't done a heavy lift like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the majority of the overage for us on the CapEx budget came from actually just not knowing all the stuff that we had to do. Like I just didn't scope the things properly. We fortunately were lucky with finding good contractors. So I GC'd the project myself. I bought the materials myself, delivered them on site. I was working from the project location every day. So I was in my car taking my work calls from there every day. And I would inventory all the materials at the end of each day. So I was making sure that my materials are not getting stolen, because sometimes it happens, contractors would steal the material and then they'll sell it or use it at other projects, right? So at that point, I'd not built my team of contractors, so I didn't know who to trust and who not to trust. So I was just being extremely cautious and just being on the job site and keeping an eye on everything. So for every different item that I had to do, so for roofing, gutters, all the exterior work, for balconies, for electrical work, for every trade that I had to use, I probably got like 5 to 7 bids. And what that helped me do is I not only was I able to compare pricing between different contractors, but some of the good contractors would also actually educate me that, hey, you're asking me for a bid for this, but what you want to do is also this, because this is going to be a nightmare down the road. So you want to get all of this done now to save you some future hassle. So I got a lot of education through it as well by going through multiple contractors. I finally ended up using contractors who worked out very well and they were very reasonably priced, except for one who was the cheapest by far and did the worst possible job, like with plumbing and everything, like just like he didn't know what he was doing clearly. So I had to fire him. And I caught him just basically sleeping at the property because he was technically homeless and he was doing drugs at the property. So I would be at the job site at midnight. At 12 o'clock, I would be there just to take a look at the progress that was done for the day if I had a busy day, right? So I would catch all of those things, and I catch this guy and I fired him. The other thing that saved me is I didn't pay money up front. So at most I would pay like $1,000 for materials or any small stuff that they would have to buy. But other than that, I would pay everyone when they hit certain milestones. And I've heard horror stories about, contractors getting paid up front and never showing up again. So I think that's one thing that helped me.
Awesome.
Great.
Do you have
Thank you.
time for one more question, or are you good to go?
Yeah, no, I can stay on for maybe 10 more minutes.
Okay.
Appreciate the info, Jay. That's great.
Yep, no problem.
So Jay, from a scaling perspective, super impressed. I started in 2020 as well, and look to try to scale. What would you say is there one thing that you focused on, or what would you say would be a key that allowed you to scale that fast? I mean, I hear vertical integration, I hear the partnerships, I hear just a gamut of things. Do you think, is there one thing that would have helped, or is it just a combination of everything you've done up to this point? Because I know I'm not going to get my wife to move into a 4-unit with the kids.
Yeah, I think if I have to just name one thing, is that would be I just fell in love with the process and real estate in general. Like I truly enjoyed it. So, and after I started to truly enjoy it, like I just wanted to do more, right? So I know that at some point you have to start thinking about scaling sustainably, because how many assets can you actually manage in parallel at the same time? You probably want to start offloading some of your smaller stuff because it's taking up too much of your time. So I think I do value scaling sustainably, because I've seen some people also scale to over 2,000 units in 2-3 years. And a lot of them are now struggling. I mean, Houston market, we're seeing that the bloodbath has already begun. But I think if you truly begin to enjoy everything that comes with real estate, like a lot of the things like heavy lift renovations and then managing tenants, to a lot of people, these are just headaches. They don't want to deal with this stuff, right? But I actually enjoyed this a lot more than anything else that I was doing. And I've tried a few other side hustles before, like, drop shipping and eBay stores and Amazon stores, but I just didn't see a future in it. Like I didn't see how this can consistently create value. And unless you find something that consistently create value, it's not going to create wealth, right? And I saw that in real estate and I enjoyed the process. And I was like, man, yeah, why didn't I start doing this sooner? I think that was mainly it.
Okay, no, that's awesome. Thank you. I am in tech also, and looking to exit that at some point.
Yeah, oh, sounds good. Yeah, absolutely.
So Ben asked if there was a book or guide that helped you with scaling, if there was anything you referenced or read.
Yeah, a book that helped with scaling. I would say that there's two. One is more of a mindset type of a book, which is Who Not How. And I've always had a tendency to keep everything under control, which meant that I was doing everything. And I had to let go of control and bring more partners on and just trust that they're doing their job. And if they're not, then politely provide feedback. But you cannot do everything perfectly, and you have to start being okay with it. As long as it's good enough, it can fly, right? And there's always opportunity to learn. But that book was tremendously helpful for me. Who not how, but I think it's still a improvement opportunity for me to even try to do it further. And then the other one I would say is Joe Fairless, his syndication book, right? Because it definitely opened up my mind to how to take down these really big deals without having all the pieces figured out all by yourself and having all the capital yourself, and how it all comes together. Because I think Joe Fairless does a really good job at explaining all aspects of not just syndication, but overall just real estate, I would say. So that book was tremendously helpful as well.
Awesome. Any last questions before Jay's got to jump here? Cool. I really appreciate the time, man. We do this call bi-weekly, so if you're ever free, feel free to join us. We meet on every other Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate the time, and we have a wide range of investors here. Some brand new looking for their first deal, some more experienced, and we'd really appreciate any time you're able to join us.
Yeah, is this the same Zoom link that we use
Yes.
each time? Perfect.
Yep.
No, I would
Exactly.
be happy to be on, and thanks for having me today. This was great. I would love to. Are most of folks on the call local to Cincinnati area, or?
Yeah, the majority. I'd say probably 90% of the. So we have like a little over 100 people in the private group, and then most of them are local. Yeah. So we have a
Awesome.
handful of out of state investors. What's the best way for anyone who wants to connect or chat more with you?
Best way. I mean, I'm very active on Facebook, so if they connect with me on Facebook, I'm pretty quick in getting back, or I can drop in my email as well.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
I
and
can
obviously
be-
Jay's tagged on the call tonight, so you can find his Facebook on there as well.
that's my email.
Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate your time. Thank you again. I know you got to go. And look forward to seeing you next time.
Sounds good, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
all.
Thanks,
Have a good
Jay.
night.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate it.
All right, cool guys. So I know we have a couple new people. Jared, I think, is this your first time here?
Yeah, it's my first time.
Awesome. So I think you're the only first time attendee. So what we do, I kind of on the second part of this, if you got a little more time, is we share our goals. So I can kind of link you what that looks like if you want to share with us. But part of the this group is obviously to learn and network, but also to help us each hold ourselves accountable to each other with the things that we're working on doing. So if you're cool with that, I'll link what we share for first time attendees, and then you'll see kind of the things to keep in mind for when you come back on the next calls.
Okay, awesome.
Cool. Give me just a second. I'll pull that up here. And if you guys have any other questions, feel free to chat while I pull this up. All right, so I'm going to link that in the chat if you want to look that up. And since you're first time attendee, if you want to go first, start us off with that first set of questions there.
Okay. So my name is Jared Chapman. I'm located in SoCal. What markets? So right now I'm looking to invest in Cincinnati first, I guess. I'd also looked at Pittsburgh, but looking at Cincinnati, Years investing, I would say 0. I've been learning for some time now, but I haven't actually done my first deal. So that pretty much answers the remaining questions there. Short-term investment goals. Within 1 to 6 months, I'm hoping to get my first deal under contract. I would say early to mid 2024. And long-term investment goals, 1 to 5 years. I would love to scale. I mean, I hear that, you know, once you do one, your confidence builds. And then the sky's the limit from there. So I would say 1 to 5 years. I don't know, put a number on it, but I would love to have at least, I don't know, 40 to 100 doors, if not more. You know, I don't actually want to put a cap on it. But I would definitely love to scale by then.
Awesome, man. Thank you for sharing. And you know, I've given this same kind of feedback to almost every new member we've had. So what I would say is sit down and really define what you want your first investment to look like. Obviously, I know you're looking at locations and markets, but you know, how much capital do you have to invest? How are you going to raise the money? What does that allow you to buy or invest in? So really try to like set up that specific criteria. That'll help you define like types of neighborhoods, types of assets, and drill down onto something specific. And then for your 1 to 5 year goals, I would do the same thing. I would look at something very specific, you know, try to come up with, you know, is it a cash flow number? Is it a net worth number? Because when you I don't think doors is as important of a metric, because, you know, buying 10 doors in California could be 100 doors in Cincinnati, right? So it's
Right.
like, you know, to me, that's kind of a useless metric in a way. But I would get specific on what you want your life to look like, how you can build a roadmap to achieve that. And that'll let you work backwards to actually do the math as an investor to just determine what you need to actually do to get to where you want to go. So that would be my feedback. Just try to get really specific on those goals, and that'll help you build that roadmap. And obviously, I hope you keep coming back and joining us. You know, our next call is on the November 1st. So it's interesting to see the people that have been coming, you know, for the last year, and how almost everybody's first goal and first thing they say is just like what you said. And the guys in here can attest to that. And then now, as they've been coming every 2 weeks and learning and refining their goals, now it's like you can ask them what their goals are and they could rattle off, you know, very specific set of criteria. Does that make sense?
It does. It does, definitely.
Cool. And that'd be my challenge to you, man. And obviously we hope to see you keep coming back. All right, Zach, see you, man. Thanks for coming. All right, cool. Well, let's so the next part of that, Jared, is we do obviously everyone who's returning, we basically just do a follow-up. So it helps us keep our goals in mind and keeps us accountable. So DJ, do you want to take over on your goals?
Sure. Yep. So from a business side, just getting through everything on the 2 mixed units. We just got windows put in and working on getting drawings submitted this week. So very excited about that. From the networking side, I attended Asha's conference last week, and it just kind of focus everything. I actually joined his mastermind that started yesterday. So double dipping on the masterminds. So I'm guaranteed, right? Success. So, but started that. I'm starting to plan for next year. So my hope is to, I'm going to try to make it out to the best ever conference, and then, probably wherever the IBM conference is next year, I'm going to both of those and work on that. Trying to get better at the social media side of things. So I'm making myself post stuff. And then on the personal side, same thing with social media, just trying to get better at that and learn. Just finished The One Thing by Gary Keller. Highly, 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 highly recommended if you guys haven't read it. I'm starting Good to Great tonight. So Jim Collins. We're leaving actually in the morning to go on experience trip number 5 with the kiddos. I'm pulling them out of school for 2 days to go play in the mud down in Kentucky in the Jeep. So that'll be fun. So I start with my W-2, I start traveling. So we get back from the Jeep trip Saturday night and I leave at 6 a.m. Sunday morning for almost 14 straight days in Vegas. So I if I make the November 1st call, it may be from the Vegas Strip and I'll be broke. So
Yeah, you have nothing better to do than join us then.
yeah, I'll join you from the poker tables. So.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, that's cool. And yeah, to your point about networking, you know, DJ and I both attended Ash Patel's Invest Beyond Multifamily conference last week, and I'm not really interested in the commercial aspect of investing, and that's obviously what Ash does for anyone who knows him. But just the networking alone, you know, I built so many relationships. I talked to so many new people I never met. I've had multiple people follow up with me who wanted to meet, wanted to get coffee, wanted to get lunch, wanted to, you know, talk about potential partnerships, investments. So just the networking opportunities alone at those type of events, I highly recommend. Obviously, for anyone who doesn't know, I just joined the Best Ever brand as well as a new podcast host. So I will be at the conference, and I think it's in April next year. And first time I'll be there as well. So highly recommended. I'm not just saying that now because I'm one of the host. The networking I've done the last 7-8 years has been one of the biggest impacts on my growth and success. So anyway, I just wanted to you know, pick off of that. Great. It's worth the money, even though you got to spend a little bit of money for most of those things.
Absolutely worth it.
All right, Todd.
So if DJ's broadcasting from the penny slots next time, we know where things have gone. So
yeah.
Just grinding with the agent stuff. I know it's not really what we're focused on, but that's kind of my side hustle that's helping to supplement stuff with the investment properties and kind of like you said, Joe, planting the seeds for hopefully that spring summer market. I've got some really solid leads. Currently working with an active buyer, a retired couple. I can't remember if I mentioned that last time. So I'm educating them on the East Side market, and just really just hustling. You know, have made some good relationships with top agents that hosting open houses for them, and just bit by bit taking steps and making progress. So was kind of floundering there in the beginning, but made some contacts and some good relationships, and these agents, kind of like this group, have kind of helped me along, and it's going well. So excited, and just keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Keep at it. Tiwi.
Hey everybody. So I think my major goal was around $10,000 a month in cash flow. So probably 40% of the way there. So trying to make offers, get new properties to hit that goal. So I've been saw 2 properties today, put an offer on one. The other property was totally busted, 5-unit. Found some bullet casings in there, so that was interesting. Hopefully that'll scare away everyone else. Also finished renovating one of the last units in my 10-unit, unit number 9. Just sent that on the chat. Yeah, so that's it. Just out there making offers, renovating my own property, trying to hit those goals.
I like this 3D photos you're using. Who does that for you?
Oh yeah, Krista, Cincy Photo Pro. I'll put her details in the chat. She does a really good job with the
virtual
photos and the
walkthrough.
tours.
Yeah, that's really
And
cool.
hers is, I think it's like you can host these things forever. It's not like Matterport where it's like it's a subscription.
Yeah, nice. I like that old timey fridge too, man. That's pretty unique.
Yeah.
It's got that old classic style. That's cool.
Now, is that your building, Tiwi, or is that the one you're looking at to make it?
Yeah, that's my 10-unit in Norwood.
Okay, awesome.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for sharing and coming back. Angela.
Yeah, it looks pretty awesome, Dewey. Love the backsplash. That's pretty cool. But anyways, I a couple of Saturdays ago I have an offer out there on a single family in Silverton. I have not heard back from the owner This is an off-market lead that I'm working on, so I will be following up this weekend. Obviously, I did not make my best offer, gave myself a little room for negotiation. So we'll see what comes out of that. And I'm also working on another off-market lead on my same street here in Hartwell, duplex. Got in touch with the owner. We've had a little back and forth. They're not really that motivated, but the duplex is empty, so they're not really making any money, right? But they inherited the property, so hopefully we can make something work. I need 2 more units to achieve my goal this year, right? So really focusing on that right now. And then I will have my first vacancy November 1st here next door. You guys know that I'm house hacking right now. Once she moves out, my plan is to work on the electrical. I'm just gonna go ahead and update some of the knob and tube that's left in that property. I don't know how much of it I have right now. I'm gonna say maybe 40% of the electrical is knob and tube. I'll go ahead and get it updated now. I also got some vacation coming up. I'll be going for close to 20 days. I'll be going to Peru. And then, of course, snowboarding season is right around the corner. So I'm going to try to work as much as I can and hopefully have that unit ready to go by the new year. And then what else? Trying to save as much as I can from work, saving every penny, living well below my means, just be able to reinvest in opportunities as they show up. Definitely gotta read Who Not How. Sounds like that could be very helpful, right? But other than that, I think things are going well. Just gotta get me a couple more deals, and appreciate you guys' support and helping me with accountability for sure.
Awesome, man. Thanks for sharing. Ben?
Yeah, hey guys, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, so I have been searching for a property for fucking forever. Finally found a 3-unit that seems to pencil out. So that's looking great. Plan on putting an offer in on that pretty quick here. Then was in California last week. Contractor prices are so expensive there. I actually got hired to fly out and go do work there. And then while I was there, I reconnected with old real estate agent friends, and now it looks like I have 2 new private money lenders. So gonna be working on that and presenting my slide deck to them. And then after that, for hoping I can look at a 10-unit off-market deal that came across my desk. And then on the personal side, threw out my back for the 7th time with 2 herniated discs. So shit's getting real, but I'm almost back at it, almost out of physical therapy here. And hopefully I can get back to working out here pretty quick. But yeah, that's it for me, guys.
Thanks for sharing, man. Brian?
Yeah, hey guys. Let me turn on the camera. Yeah, so I'm pretty similar goals. I guess I should turn the light on. Pretty similar goals as DJ. Since we're working on the same deal. But yeah, I guess the reason I have my camera off too is I don't know how you're doing it, Joe, with the newborn, but I'm just struggling finding time, so that's why I was multitasking. I was cleaning bottles and pump parts and stuff like that while listening, and my other personal goal of my running, I'm still keeping up with that. So I run 2 more miles every month Started out with 2 miles in January, so it's 20 miles this month. So I was also running part of the presentation as well, getting a run in while listening. So I'm keeping up with that. So yeah, other than getting the deal going, I think another goal was to, requires my kids to grow up, which is a matter of time, is to get more involved. I'm kind of living through DJ right now, and getting into more meetups and mastermind stuff like that. So I can see the value there, just with this group. So with time, I know I'll be more involved, and so I know good things will come from that. So yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you making the time to join us when you can. I know it's tough, and I'm very blessed that my fiance is still on maternity leave. She's still got a few more weeks till she goes back, so she's been able to carry most of the load there. And I also messed my ankle up really bad, like right when the baby was born, so that allowed me to be around the house a lot more than I probably would have been, because I was pretty immobile and wasn't playing basketball or working out and stuff. So picked up a lot of extra free time there that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So kind of timing worked out, I guess. All
nice.
things are meant to happen.
Yeah.
And so anyway, personally, I closed on the lease option, the master lease option on the 40 unit on Monday. So I'm actually going tomorrow to the property for the first time and posting all the notices to the tenants. It actually technically goes into effect November 1st, but we sign the documents, and next 2 weeks are just kind of implementing that transition of management to the tenants. I know I've talked a little bit about it in this group, but once I have more details and data, and I kind of have a more well-defined business plan for the property, I'll set up a call that we can really deep dive into that type of deal and look at every angle of it. But excited to get started on it. Definitely a different type of deal than I've done on any of the other ones. So yeah, looking forward to getting going and learning that process for that type of deal. And then I think I mentioned in the beginning of the call, we're transitioning my existing portfolio and this new property over to Appfolio, so the management program. So that is actually a lot more complicated process than I would have imagined. It's like a 10-step process of onboarding, and you actually have to have your home office inspected for the all the sensitive financial information that they provide you with their in-house reporting and all that. So it's a lot of really kind of strict criteria or whatever that you have to jump through, which I didn't know any of that going in. So it's been a process of trying to onboard that, but the goal is to have the entire portfolio transition to that by December 1st, because that takes about 6 weeks to happen. So yeah, other than that, everything else is going well. Finally getting some progress on permits. DJ mentioned we're finally able to submit our plans for their project and get that one going. And kind of the next phase, we got the windows put in, got some of the framing done already, but actually able to start putting it back together. Funny enough, the head building inspector and their receptionist is both out sick this week, so that's been, yeah, of course. So, but other than that, they're taking another load of plans on Friday, so we'll be able to get it turned in for that next trip. And then the other project, same thing. So I got permits finally getting approved. Covington's ready to start, and got some progress with my Cincinnati and my Claremont County permits I've been waiting on. So as I think I mentioned several times, I knew they'd all kind of hit at the same time, because that's always what happens. So I'm sure I'll have five sets of projects all ready to roll at the same time. But it's been good. We've been able to bring on more employees, pulling the 40 unit in has allowed us to bring on extra manpower that is sustainable, because now we have so many different renovation projects that are going to be happening. It allows us to keep more staff full time. So yeah, all that stuff's been good things. And still working on the new construction business. So that's a plan for 24, is to roll out some new construction buildings, whether that's infill building, new development, or even multifamily development. That I'm still working on, and it's really going to be where the land is, what it's zoned for, what we're allowed to do. That's going to dictate what actually happens. But I've been spending a lot of time on building out that future endeavor. I think that's it though. I got a lot of different things going on. Any questions about anything we talked about tonight? Final thoughts, comments?
One
Yeah, go ahead.
one quick question, and don't go deep. I don't want to
Sure.
take up time. Have you had any experience in appealing property taxes with Claremont County?
I've never tried. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. That might come up with my buyers. That's why I was just wondering.
Yeah, I will say in general, Claremont County has not been nearly as unreasonable as Hamilton County across the board, but no, I haven't had to actually appeal it.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
So our next call is November 1st. Are you guys enjoying these, like, guest interviews? You guys like that type of conversation? I know I ask this almost every call, but it's like, you guys feel free to let me know what you want to learn more about. If we do like a really deep dive on the 40 unit, is that something you guys are interested in learning more about, all the angles of that type of deal? Because we might, I'll say we might do that on the next call. Then on the 1st, I should have more specific business plans in place here in the next 2 weeks. But
I also think it'd be great if you had time, if a presentation on scaling. I think that's seems to be like a hard nut to crack for people.
Yeah, I've said that was definitely a lot of the calls for Jay, and yeah, I can certainly
or just your own experience with it.
Yeah, for sure. No, happy to set some time aside to cover that as well. But like I said, you guys think about it. If you think of things you want to learn more about, you want to cover. If there's anyone you guys know out there in the stratosphere of real estate that you want to talk to, let me know. I've been having pretty good success in reaching out to people that I don't even know that are really high level investors, and bringing them on to the podcast. So I'm setting up a lot of cool interviews on the podcast. And I think I could, get a lot of people to come talk to us as well. So if there's somebody out there you want to talk to, feel free to shoot me a name. And, if I know them, obviously great. If I don't, I can try to rope them in. So
hey, what's a podcast?
So Joe Fairless's Best Ever podcast, I started hosting last week. So we just released our first set of episodes that I was featured on, and I'm going to be just one of the new regular hosts. So I'm lining up some pretty cool guests here in the next couple of weeks, and
awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe, I got a random question for you guys. Do you guys ever check on your tenants? My tenants, my single family, things are going well, right? I get the check every month, no problems. I have not heard from their neighbors who used to be my neighbors, who I know very well. I guess I should probably call them up, call my old neighbors, see how things are going, but I have not heard anything. I just keep getting paid. Things are well. You guys have any thoughts, or how do you normally handle that?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
so
no,
go ahead.
Yeah, I was too involved, and I had more than one resident just say like, "Hey man, stop like offering too many things to me. You're being like way too on top of everything." And I'm like, I don't know, maybe there's mold, behind your sink or something. And they're like, just relax. So yeah, I do like quarterly check-ins. I'll text or email people and just say like, how are things going? And something else I have is like changing the furnace filters is once every 90 days. So I have them text me a picture of that, and then when they do that, I have a nice reply just saying like, yeah, man, if there's anything you need, let me know. So like one small thing, and I literally had to tease it out of them. They didn't bring it up. Is I have a bunch of porch pirates at a property, so I'm buying one of those like deck boxes. I'm gonna put a lock on it, and apparently Amazon will deliver to a lockbox with a combination lock on it. So trying to solve a problem for my renters there. And that's like, some people say I'm being stupid because like why spend money if they've already signed, but I think that'll be helpful for getting them to sign for future years, and then it's improving the property for future renters as well.
Yeah, I would just say I have probably the opposite problem. I don't check in nearly as much as I should, and I told the story on here, I think, but I literally went a year without talking to any of my tenants for an entire year. And I remember specifically it was like to the day when a water heater blew up and I had to have it replaced. But yeah, I have not been very good at that. One of the cool things with Appfolio is I think you can kind of set those auto check-ins, so that'll definitely be something I take advantage of. But when it's just like me and my assistant, all the other stuff we're already dealing with every day, we don't like go out of our way to check in with people that we're not having any problems with.
Cool.
Yeah, the furnace filter excuse, except I actually set up a quarterly in, you know, just property review, and I actually go in and change it for them. So
That's a good idea.
which is why I'm annoyed that I'm too hands-on. But
Yeah, yeah.
The same-
The one thing that I built into my lease was that every fall and every spring I said that I was gonna send someone to just clean up the yard, even though they're responsible for it on a daily basis, right? That's gonna be me showing up. I guess I'll get a chance, and then, like you guys said, I'll probably go ahead and replace the AC filter, right? And go from there. So now I appreciate the input for sure.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you all for being here again. Next call is November 1st at 9 p.m. Eastern. So I hope to see you all then. If you need anything in the meantime, feel free to reach out. And if not, I'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Joe. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.